Hello, everybody, and I hope everybody's doing well and you're enjoying the beginning of spring, more or less, whatever time frame you are. It doesn't matter, depending on what day you look at it, it's still roughly that time of year. Meteorologically, it is spring, whatever that definition of spring is, but it's getting to that point. Yeah, I want to talk today about memory. It's a thing that we all complain about at some point in time. But especially if you're trying to remember something, I thought there was some information that might be beneficial because otherwise, I know that it seems like trying to remember things seems almost random to a lot of people. But today I wanted to discuss something from, and I'm guessing I can pronounce this way, Bjork, Bjork. They're researchers out in California, as far as I know. They're still in California. And they were discussing, in a sense, the usefulness of forgetting and how to use that to improve your memory. But I wanted to start off with the concept of two issues, storage and retrieval. Both of these pertain to memory. The storage strength of memory is basically how well do you have it put away? Is this put away in a sense, if you will, and I'll get into this in a bit more, but if you think about it in a standpoint that you put something away in a place that you know you can get it and you know where it is. It's somewhat like that when spring and summer comes and you put away your winter clothes, next year when it gets cold, you know where you put your winter clothes. You may not know specifically where the sweatshirt is, but you basically know in a sense that it's in that drawer kind of thing. Otherwise, you've got some issues that you've put something away and then, 2 days later, you have absolutely no idea what you did with it. You go through the whole house and it could be just about anywhere. So the idea for memory is basically that it's stored in a place that you can retrieve it and you can get it. That has a high storage retrieval issue. Okay. Now, what we've got here from a standpoint of memory and learning is that this is going to be the information you work on a lot. You study a lot and you go over it and you get that into your head. And so it's there with the idea that you can pull it out when you need it. Okay. Now, just for this particular issue, well, let me go on to the other one. Retrieval essentially is the concept and the strength of how easy is it to pull out of your head once it's in there. Because as we all know, there's some things in your head that seem to be there forever, and then some things that you put in your head and it's like it's gone almost immediately. Yes, no, maybe, could be, and we'll talk about that a little bit in a minute. Let's talk about storage in that standpoint. When you were little, if you're at least born and raised in the United States anyway, you probably went through a period of time in which you drove your adults crazy around you by singing Old MacDonald and the alphabet song. And you did things like that, and you went through that over and over and over again to, driving everybody else crazy. It's kind of like if I hear that song one more time, but you kept doing it because that's the way you had to learn it. So you stored it in your head to the point that you've still got that. If you start the alphabet today, odds are you'll get, assuming, of course, that you were raised in this country, the United States, that is, if you get to LMN, sooner or later, most likely, most Americans are going to start singing LMNOP, and then they start go into the alphabet song. Very few native-born Americans who were born and raised here can go through the whole entire alphabet and say it with the idea of A, B, C, D, and go through the whole thing because we've learned the song so indelibly in our head that when we start to say it, it comes back the way we learned it in the first place, way back when in ancient history. So if you're 70 and you learned it when you were 4, you've got a 64-year-old memory that's pretty intact. Okay? Try it sometimes. It's really difficult to say the alphabet. You really have to concentrate on it. So that would have a high storage strength. The same thing as when you go to school and you learn the multiplication tables. Now, you go through that and study it a lot. That one stays not because you went over the multiplication tables in the same sense of over and over and over again that you did with the alphabet song, but that over the course of time you use them. Somewhere during the course of a week, somebody's going to ask a question and you're going to need something. If you're at the grocery store and I need, 3 bottles of this and it's 24 cents, how much am I going to spend? You use the multiplication table. Not that you can find anything for 24 cents anymore, but you get the idea. So that you're using that on a relatively constant basis, and so it's got a high storage strength. So there's something that's got a stronger storage strength that's going to be easier to pull out of your head. Okay? So let's say that you've studied for a test real deeply, at least with the idea of cramming it because you've got a test on Friday. Maybe it's for a class you don't like and you just want to take the test, pass the test, get a good grade on it, and then you intend to do a memory dump because you hope to never see the material again as long as you live. So you go in and you study it and you take the test on Friday. Let's suppose, for the sake of argument, that you've got a teacher who's trying an experiment or whatever, or maybe you've got, a substitute who thinks the test is supposed to be on Monday, whatever. And you come back to class on Monday and you get exactly the same test. Odds are you're not going to do well. You might even fail it. Because essentially, if you went into that material, the test on Friday, with the idea of learning it for the point of just taking the test, finishing the test, and basically doing the infamous brain dump, and not thinking about that anymore because you're saying, okay, goodbye, I'm glad to see you, farewell, never hope to see you again. Come Monday, it's not going to be there because in a sense, you've diminished the storage strength. Okay? Now, where retrieval comes in, let's suppose for the sake of argument, you've heard that you've got a teacher that, will do something like that. Once every 10 years, the teacher will give the test on Friday and then give it on Monday. And for whatever reason, you decide, I'm not going to chance it. I'm going to study a little bit. So instead of doing the infamous brain dump, you periodically, 2 or 3 times during the weekend, you at least go back and read your notes over. All you're doing is going back and reading your notes over. You're not going to cram. You're not going to do anything. You're just going to go back and review that information. You go into that Monday class and you have the test. You will do better. You may not get an A on it if you got an A on Friday because it's not quite as into your head as it was at the moment you took the test on Friday, but you're likely to get a B or C because you made it easier to retrieve because you reviewed the material during the course of the weekend. So that when you put something in your head, if you want to be able to pull it back later, you need to be able to actually retrieve it. So one of the things that people have discovered about memory is that if you learn something, if this is something you want to remember and you learn it and then periodically test yourself on it, and I mean periodically, I don't mean necessarily like every Monday at 10 o'clock. That might work too, but it's in that particular case, you're setting something up on a specific time and a specific day, and most likely it's just a specific person, or excuse me, a specific place. That might complicate things. But if you do it, say, like whenever you think about it, let's say you review your notes on Thursday, and then maybe 2 weeks later you do it on a Monday, and then maybe another 3 days later, and then not for another 3 weeks. But you periodically, in a sense, give yourself another test on that memory. At the end of, say, 3 or 4 months of doing this, that's going to have a high storage strength and a really good retrieval strength. So you're going to be able to pull it back out, and it'll probably stay in your head a lot longer than if you just study for it once, take the test, and not do anything with it again. So if you're going to study something at the beginning of a term, or you're going to learn something that you know you're going to have to come back and deal with later, periodically go over those notes. And even if you don't have pop quizzes, say in a classroom, give yourself a little, quote, pop quiz. And if you're going through this by studying by, say, flashcards, shuffle the flashcards. Because, again, what you're doing is you're trying to put it into different circumstances and different situations and forcing your head to retrieve it under a different set of circumstances, which strengthens the retrieval aspect of it, which makes it going to be easier when you do it later. Now, what's going to happen is you may not use that material for 6 months, 2 years, or whatever. Somewhere along the line, 5 years from now, whatever, something's going to come up, and this is when you get those moments in which, gee, where did that come from? And something comes out of your head, or you say, I'm not sure I'm going to remember how to do this, and you start doing it, and you do it. Because you've got that combination that it went into your head with a strong storage strength, because you probably went through it several times, and you also did it often enough at odd enough places, odd enough times, in other words, not scheduled on a regular basis, randomly, so to speak. And that the retrieval brought it up so that it was there later on when you pulled it up. It might take you a little longer if you've got like 5 or 10 years between the time you did those things, but it will still pretty much come back to you. So the basic thing here is that hopefully the takeaway with this is that if you're trying to learn something that you want to keep, because maybe at the beginning of the term and you're going to need it later, or maybe you're in a situation that you're going to learn something now, but you're going to need it in another subsequent class or subsequent period, or something about that is going to come up and you're going to need it later. and you don't want to forget it. And you also don't want to go through the whole hassle of going through that whole, shall we say, cramming all over. Periodically test yourself. Just going over the notes, giving yourself a little pop quiz. Doesn't even necessarily have to be the same questions, but as long as you're making yourself go back and review the material at random or what may seem to you random concepts, you're more likely to remember it later when you need it than if you just do it once, think I'll never see this again in my life, do a brain dump, and that's it. Because then later, if you do need it, it's going to be really hard to pull back up, and you might have to, in a sense, go back to the cram session again to pull it back up. Does that make sense? Does that sort of like ringing in bells because you've seen that happen in your life? This may explain why you get those random memories, because something comes up in your universe that gives you a clue, and it's like, where did that come from? Something that you did way back when. You did it at that particular moment in time. You got that cue. It pulled it up out of the, were able to retrieve it from your storage, and out popped the information. Okay? I hope this was helpful. Might help as far as if you've got children, is to make sure that you don't mind that they're going to go around singing that alphabet song through the house, because this is the way they learn. You might even want to try it again. So if you've got any questions, let me know. If you enjoy where I'm going with this, let me know that too, because I appreciate that. And we will chat with you later. Have a good day and a good week. Bye.